gives me a lot of joy to see the
Yeah,
amount of liquidity that we're able to put in the hands of the owners, selling shareholders,
yeah.
from what they just went through and accomplished over several years of building a business.
I don't think people realize that most of the time when you want to sell a business, you don't just get up one morning and decide to sell it. It's a
I wish you
very long
could,
process.
John. I wish you could. It doesn't work that way, but um, every day it's an adventure
Yeah,
because it's a living, breathing business. It's a business. It's moving every day. It's
yeah.
changing everything. It's never the same. I wish it was like real estate where you just kind of see it, the building's there, and you can buy it, look at it, and then you're done. In a business, you got people, processes, technology that have to get evaluated, and it's ever changing, which is part of what the excitement is.
Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we navigate the changing world around us. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, specializing in lead generation and AI automation, here to help you understand how our world is changing and what it means for you. In this episode, we have Michael Lamm, co founder of Corporate Advisory Solutions. He will share his insights and journey from founding the firm to its key services in mergers and acquisition and consulting. Michael will discuss the M&A process, business transformations, and the impact of AI on the industry, along with his personal motivations and industry insights. If you guys don't know, Michael is a very well known staple in the industry, and I know that Michael will know what the industry is and where it's going. Michael, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks again, John. It's great to be here.
By the way, before we begin on the in depth questions, do you mind giving us a quick intro on who Michael is? What's your experiences, expertise, and what keeps you busy these days?
Sure. I run again. My name is Michael Lamm. I run a boutique investment bank that is based in Philadelphia,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, and our areas of focus are in tech-enabled business services. We do a lot of work in the call center, business process outsourcing, healthcare revenue cycle management, and the credit and collection industries.
By the way, when you graduated from college, did you go right into M&A or did you have other industries beforehand?
No, I was actually doing venture capital work with
Yeah.
Israeli technology companies right around the time I was about to graduate from college, and it gave me a lot of the key skill sets that I needed to go into investment banking. One of them being just reviewing a lot of business plans and a lot of new technologies at that time. This is back right around the period during the dot com period, the growth and then the bust that occurred. And there's a lot of really new technologies that were coming out from Israel at the time. So I got to learn a lot. It was a great experience.
And CAS is founded in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. What's your main vision for it? Do you want to bring into the industry?
For me and for our deal team, one of the key things that I have in front of us is to work with new, innovative, entrepreneurial companies. Being we're now in this world of digital transformation, it's important for us to align ourselves with new thought leaders groups that are trying to think differently about the coverage areas that we have. And we've been finding a lot of success in that, John, trying to find people and owners and decision makers that are thinking differently about where the market is going to be going over the next 5 to 10 years.
That's amazing. And CAS mainly does mergers and acquisitions, or do you also have other services that you enjoy doing?
We also do a lot of our work
Yeah.
starts well before mergers and acquisitions. We do valuations,
Yeah.
exit prep, boardroom level consulting work, which ultimately leads to some form of an M&A engagement down the line. And we actually much prefer to start with one of those service offerings before we get to representing the company for sale or helping them buy another business.
Do you enjoy mergers and acquisitions, or is there other parts of your work that you enjoy more?
Now, I'm a deal junkie, John. I love mergers and acquisitions. It's been in my blood for 20 plus years. So it's definitely a part of my daily life. But I also like the other consultative services as well because you really get to know the company, the management team, the owners in a different way before you get to the transaction side of it.
Do you think the owner have a very huge influence on how the company functions?
It certainly does. I mean, if because I've seen so many companies that have not gone where things have not gone well.
Yeah.
The owner and the manager, the CEO, the founder
Yeah.
is kind of the guy that drives it. And if his vision or thought process is not aligned correctly with the rest of the team, or there isn't a good cultural balance in the business, it usually doesn't lead to a positive outcome at the end of the day.
So is that also the case on the culture on the company? So if there's a bad culture, do you think people are more likely to do a bad job?
No doubt. I mean, it all starts at the top, and
Yeah.
if the view and the way the management, the owners run the business, if it's flawed, it usually the outcome and what's occurring in the business usually isn't very positive. Um, Even in our business,
Yeah.
culture's everything. We try to treat our people well and do right by our team and by our clients too. It's kind of our mantra.
By the way, we've talked about this at the start, although it's not recorded. Do you mind telling people what those awards on your back is, the little square ones?
Yeah, they're called tombstones. So our business, we're judged on closing transactions. So those are little toys that or little emblems that we share with our team internally as well as our clients when we close a transaction
So basically, you are measured by how many tombstones you have.
every day. That's what usually in our world people are calling us and they're saying, "What deals did you close today, or last week, or last month, or this year?" And that's how we get judged.
Where's your current number at?
We've within CAS,
Yeah.
we've closed over 70 transactions since we started the business in 2013. So
It's amazing. That's around seven a year. Yeah.
that's right.
And I
That's
don't think
exactly right.
people realize how big of a deal or a close actually is in your business because you're not dealing with small companies.
Yeah, we're dealing with typically the companies are anywhere. It could be as small as 10
Yeah.
million of revenue. They could be 200 million of revenue. The difference for us, though, John, is they've got to be in our coverage markets. We're
Yeah.
not working for an oil and gas business or a manufacturing company. They've got to be in one of our core areas.
What's your core areas?
So we cover three markets.
Yeah.
The call center and business process outsourcing space is one. We also do work in healthcare, revenue cycle management,
Yeah.
and the credit and collections industry.
Which one do you enjoy the most? Because I think that different industries have very different cultures and way of doing things.
They all are fun. I mean, seriously, they all have different nuances to them.
Yeah,
Met a lot of wonderful people in each of the coverage areas that we play in. That's the rewarding thing, when we're at the pinnacle of selling somebody's business and taking that company from wherever it was to the point where they're closing the business and there's a big liquidity event. It gives me a lot of joy to see the
yeah,
amount of liquidity that we're able to put in the hands of the owners, selling shareholders,
yeah.
from what they just went through and accomplished over several years of building a business.
I don't think people realize that most of the time when you want to sell a business, you don't just get up one morning and decide to sell it. It's a
I wish you
very long
could,
process.
John. I wish you could. It doesn't work that way, but um, every day it's an adventure,
Yeah,
because it's a living, breathing business. It's a business. It's moving every day. It's
yeah.
changing everything. It's never the same. I wish it was like real estate where you just kind of see it, the building's there, and you can buy it, look at it, and then you're done. In a business, you got people, processes, technology that have to get evaluated, and it's ever changing, which is part of what the excitement is.
I've talked with a few people who worked with business acquisitions and as well as real estate, as their business is nature that way. And as per what they say, it's more exciting in the business acquisition side of things, just because of the fact that there's no copy and paste there. Everything is different.
Yeah, it just isn't. Every business, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's the same company in a coverage market, they're all different. Everything about them are different. The management team, the culture, the financial performance, the way the operation looks and feels when you walk through it, they're just always different.
On your opinion, how long does it take for someone to actually get their company into a point that it's actually great to sell it? To prepare
W-
the things.
1 to 3 years is usually a good timeline to have in your back pocket when you're thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a very long time.
Yeah. You could do it faster,
Yeah,
but if you want to do it and really put the time and effort and resources into it,
yeah.
usually 1 to 3 years is usually a good timeline.
Is that on? Does 1 to 3 years apply to different sizes of businesses?
No doubt. Yeah, I mean if you have a company that's doing 50 million of revenue and 15 million of
Yeah,
EBITDA, and you got all the resources and people around you, it's going
yeah.
to be a lot faster than somebody that's got a $5 million business and the owner turns on the lights every day.
Let's try and focus on the little mom and pop shops. In on your opinion, what are the five main things that they can do, in the next few months or years, so that they can make the value of their business go up? The simple things.
Number one, getting your financial controls in order,
Yeah,
right? So making sure that you can produce financial statements. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have an audited financial statement.
yeah,
It just needs to mean that you can produce financial statements in a timely manner that are correct and accurate and everything else.
yeah,
Um, Number two, if you are in a scenario with a smaller company and you're an owner of the business that, as I described earlier, turns on the lights, turns off the lights, and also has all the client relationships, begin to think through how you could transition some of those client relationships to somebody else so you're not fully relied on after the transaction. Because if you don't do a transition or bring in other people that have an ability to manage those relationships, you end up being the one that has to stay for a extended period of time to do that for the buyer or with the buyer as a part of the transaction. And then third, I would tell you that, making sure that you have spent the energy, the time to figure out how your business is going to get valued in the marketplace. Because we see a lot of times we talk to smaller business owners, they come to us and they've got this view on value that's completely incorrect. And the more that they can educate themselves, get themselves in front of people like us that can give them advice and guidance on valuation is really going to be an important piece to it as well.
Your role in involves overseeing M&A engagement, joint ventures, and strategic partnerships. Do you mind walking us through a typical M&A and how does it actually look like?
Yeah, so there's different pieces of M&A, right? There are times where a company will come to us and they'll say, I want to buy an equity position. I want to buy a call center company in the Philippines, as an example. And as a part of that, they may decide before that, John, that they're going to buy the business. They're going to do a joint venture with the company versus an outright acquisition. That that's usually a joint venture or a revenue share, and that usually is a way for them to walk before they run, before buying the company. As an example, in the Philippines, and then once they see that it works and everything is going very smoothly, maybe down the line they'll have an option to acquire an equity position in the business. So a lot of times it'll start as a joint venture or a partnership and end up into an M&A type arrangement.
So even the big guys wants to test the waters first.
Sometimes testing the waters is better than jumping in and finding out a lot of things you didn't know.
Yeah. And in a business, it's not just like a house where you have inspected. You see that there's moles upstairs, maybe there's a hole on the closet. You don't see those things. On As you said, in businesses, there's a lot of things that you might not see on a regular basis that could genuinely take a big hit on your business.
We always tell people that the longer, as a first time buyer, if you're
Yeah,
buying a company for the first time, take your time with it.
yeah,
There's no rush. There'll be another deal that pops up. But really take your time and thoughtfully look at all the different components of your due diligence process to make sure that that company that you're very enamored by is really the right fit for you.
yeah.
And a lot of people rush into these types of deals and move too quickly. And then after the fact, there's regret because they missed certain key things that they would have caught if they spent more time.
Yeah. By the way, how do you think COVID actually impacted your business?
Well, I'll tell you, John, I was sweating it right that February, March when COVID hit.
Yeah,
Every one of our transactions, I think for the exception of one, went on hold,
yeah.
just stopped. And my partner and I sat there and said, well, this is a bit of a problem, right? Like any business owner would. But what ended up happening was 30 days later, um, all of our deals started coming back to life, but they just came back to life over Zoom. So it was actually a very busy period of time for us. We ended up closing, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 deals that year after COVID hit. But it was a new environment because we weren't sitting meeting face to face. We were doing work and everything else over Zoom. So it was extremely efficient. Um, I would tell you the relationship side of it changed because, you can only do so much over Zoom, um, versus sitting down and having a beer with somebody and getting to know them.
And on your opinion, as you said, it makes it more efficient. And do you think that basically changed the way you do business? I mean, the fact that you don't have to fly in anymore from another state, and to get to know somebody, and it's socially acceptable now to just use Zoom.
It certainly made things more efficient. But now that we're post COVID, I can see, and just from our experience, have just seen the benefit of meeting for dinner and doing a site visit in person. There is no doubt there's a time and place in the earlier stages of evaluating an opportunity where Zoom is really useful. Um, but you can't, especially in M&A with how relationship oriented it is, even in technology, that face to face interaction is really a value that you can't easily put a number to. You need to have it.
And especially because business is like having a kid. And I think if you're a seller, you don't want to just let somebody else adopt your kid.
Exactly. I mean, it's your bloodline, right? You want
Yeah,
to get to know, trust, feel good that whoever's going to buy that business from you is going to take care of it
Yeah.
and keep your legacy alive versus it just being a commodity. And that's where I think the face to face interaction becomes invaluable in a process.
Yeah. Do you see that there's a lot of people who, after selling their business, regrets it?
Some do.
Yeah.
And I always tell people as they start thinking about their selling their company is, well, what do they want to do after? Because I'll tell you, I've seen so many people say, I'm just going to play golf
Oh,
after I sell, but golf gets old after a while.
yeah.
What else are you going to do? Um, but also some people can do that and get comfortable at that time. It also depends on the age of the owner
Oh, yeah.
and where they're sitting in life, because a lot of times when you get into your 50s, your 60s, you've already been working for 30 years and you want to go do something else. Maybe you want to go into a different industry altogether and build a business. It's everybody has a different view of it. As we're all human, we're different. So I do find that a lot of times they need to be asked that question,
Yeah.
right? You got to ask them and say, what are you going to do after you sell this? Do you have a game plan?
Yeah.
And it's always an interesting question. It's always an interesting answer you get back.
And do you think, from what you've seen, is majority of the people selling their businesses old people who wants to retire?
No, it's not always that way. It could be, I'm 44.
Yeah.
I've sold companies, who had their business owner is much younger than me.
Yeah.
And I've also been the other way too, John, and
Yeah.
sold companies where people are in their late 70s and 80s, running their companies. So it really just depends on where the person is in their life.
Yeah. When you're going through, when you're trying to make your company a good company to actually sell, make the value bigger. From your experience, what are the biggest challenges that the owners actually face?
Sometimes
Yeah.
letting go is a hard thing. So if you've been running a business for 25 years and all
Yeah.
you know is that, and every day you do basically doing the same thing, and then you are being told
Yeah.
that you're going to have to go work for somebody else for a period of time after you sell, it's not always an easy transition. And I will
Especially,
tell you that will that's always a big item for most owners where they say, what's life going to be like after
yeah.
I sell and to who?
It's especially scary because most of the business owners have these entrepreneurial spirits on them that they don't want to stop working.
They don't, or they just don't, or they have a hard time being told, even though
Yeah.
it may be in good nature, being told what to do,
Yeah.
right? In their way, right? When you're dealing with those dynamics, you have to know what kind of buyer and what kind of scenario is right for the client and what they're looking for. And the sooner you could figure that out in a deal process, the sooner you'll get a deal done.
From your experience, what are the essential elements for a successful maybe joint venture or a strategic partnership? What needs to be there for it to be successful?
Trust, 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 and then transparency,
Yeah.
right? And a willingness to also be entrepreneurial and try something different.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those elements, trust,
Yeah.
transparency, specifically, and then
Yeah.
obviously the aptitude and process to get things, being entrepreneurial about how you handle each activity and each part of the workflow,
Yeah.
it doesn't always end well.
Is there a lot of big misconceptions about your industry that, affects the way that you do business?
Yeah, John, I think one of the biggest ones that we experience a lot is that, we're always just a broker or we're just out for our fees.
Yeah.
And those that have been doing it as long as I have or longer know that it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
That helping somebody through this process doesn't happen overnight. And you're putting a lot of time, effort, and faith into the client that they're going to be trustworthy, transparent, and in their own way to
Yeah.
help you get to a finish line. So a lot of times people just think, oh, it's just about the fee. They just care about getting paid at the end of the transaction. It's absolutely not the case. It's a part of it,
Yeah.
but it's much more than that.
Is there cases where you're assisting a business for selling and maybe it's 95% done and the deal is close, is near to close, and they just basically didn't want to sell anymore?
Yes, painfully. I've been in that wonderful period, that process,
Yeah.
and it's painful because you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into the
Yeah.
transaction, and then when you get to a point, and it's not always your clients. It could be a buyer. The buyer
Yeah.
doesn't have the financing. Client loses their own client. There's an operational, a legal issue that pops up, and it's um, it's never fun. But what one of the things I will tell you from being been through it a few times, um, and I could name them on my hand, all the experiences I've had there, is that you learn from them
Yeah.
and you learn what things to look for, what questions to ask, and how you may do something differently to prevent that outcome. You'll never get it 100% right,
Yeah.
but you do learn from those experiences, as painful as they sometimes are,
Yeah.
and it makes you better.
Is this a common occurrence?
No, it's really not. I mean, there are things that in any market, like
Yeah.
during 2008, when the market crashed,
Oh
we
man.
saw a lot of deals explode.
Yeah.
But that was a market dynamic, and we got through it.
Yeah.
So I would tell you it's definitely a small portion of the transactions that we work on end up there.
What emerging trends, or how that industry is transforming? What are the biggest changes
I
that
mean,
you're
just like
seeing?
you're probably seeing in other industries, AI is the new buzzword that everybody talks about, and most
Yeah.
people don't even know what it is. And I think that in itself, I call it more digital transformation
Yeah.
in our markets, replacing human beings where they can, or leveraging technology to reduce costs is definitely the name of the game. And so we're just seeing a huge push of new tech, new vendors, new ways of thinking about the workflows in these end markets we're in, where they can use digital to help create more efficiency and more profitability.
Personally, do you use a lot of AI in your company?
We're starting to.
Yeah.
Yeah, marketing, our sales, our lead gen, we're
Yeah.
definitely beginning to utilize it. But we're also slow to move too, John. We're testing it. We're trying
Yeah.
to see where this world of digital transformation is going and how it affects our profession. We're not jumping in and just trying everything. It's expensive, it's costly to
Yeah.
implement, and I think right now I'm trying to see where it's going to be and how it's going to affect us, and we're doing a lot of research around
Yeah.
it versus jumping in with 2 feet.
Yeah. And in your opinion, do you think a lot of industries, or basically a lot of positions in this said industries, would be replaced by AI?
I think there will always be a human element in
Yeah.
any market you're in. I don't know this view that it's going to, like the Elon Musk's view that
Yeah.
everything is going to be automated. I, um, I just keep thinking that we're humans, right? We all want human interaction. We like brain power. We want to be able to use our brains. Are there functions that are so task
Yeah.
oriented, like data entry and chatbot, other things that are fully that you just need to go the route of digital. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about it. But there's a lot of other things like where communication is just a needed part of what the workflow looks like,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's easily replaceable.
Yeah. And there's a lot of industries that the human connection and just the fact that you get to talk face to face, I don't think will be replaced.
Right. Like if I want to schedule a time to go see a doctor, I don't want to talk to a human being. I'd rather do it automated or via text or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if I have a question about a bill and I'm trying to figure out why someone's charged me what they charged me, and I just don't understand it. I want somebody to talk to me about it
Yeah.
versus it being a robot. And I'm just using those as
Yeah.
examples. Not everybody may view it the same way, but that's my personal view.
Since one of your three main industries is call centers, the rise of these voice AI callers. I think you're aware of them. Do you th-
Absolutely.
do
Yeah.
you think call centers will take a big hit?
I think they're going to evolve, and we're seeing that because not anymore are they being called call centers or being called contact centers.
Yeah.
And so they're all trying to adapt to what their end client needs, whether it's a bank, whether it's a hospital,
Yeah.
or a utility company. And they all recognize that they need to have an AI component to what they're doing to deal with the consumer or the business in a manner that's going to make it
Yeah.
efficient for the client and for themselves. So the answer is yes, they're going to change, but
Yeah.
I do still think there will be a call, an inbound and outbound calling need
Yeah.
for those centers to deal with.
For me personally, I think it's gonna be like the chatbots, where when you're first chatting with the chatbot, you chat with AI, but if there's something that they can't answer, they connect you with a human.
And they will get better. They will get better at doing just only mundane tasks, like when you have to return a package via
Yeah.
Amazon. It's going to get better and faster and more efficient and easier. But you're still, when you're having a difficult issue or
Yeah.
something comes up, there's still going to need to be a phone element, and you're going to need to talk to a human. And those call centers are going to need to have that capability too.
On your opinion, because we've already talked about what these small businesses can do to actually increase their value, do you mind letting us know what's the common mistakes that they're doing that is making their value so much low?
Not embracing technology,
Yeah.
not going forward and thinking about what their business's runway looks like, where there's no growth and no sales and marketing. They've got to be thinking about how to get it positioned to excite a buyer coming to the table. Because if they're not willing to make those investments to get the return on that ROI when they sell the business, it's just going to be hard to maximize the valuation. I can't tell you how many companies I walk into sometimes and I say, if only that business owner would have done the following. Um, and it usually is around investment, technology, people investments, etc.
Is there a lot of these business owners where they know what they need to do, but they just don't want to do it?
Sometimes it's a balance sheet issue, John. It's just they
Yeah.
can't afford to make those exciting changes, right? Or they are concerned about the regulatory and compliance changes that are happening in a particular end market, and they don't want to make a wrong move, especially if they're at the point where they're gearing up for retirement. And those are all reasonable, but
Yeah.
also you have to take that into account when your business is going to get valued, because it's going to likely be at a lower multiple or
Yeah.
price point all in because those investments weren't made and those risks weren't taken.
For someone, let's say maybe they're around their 30s and they want to have a business, what case would you say whether they should get a business or start a business? What type of people should start or should just buy?
I think there there are serial entrepreneurs out there that they
Yeah.
build one business, they build it for a few years, and then they sell it and they go off to the next thing.
Yeah.
I always, kind of wish I would have gotten a psychology degree when I was in college, but I didn't. But I will tell you, evaluating yourself as a person is probably the biggest decision point for somebody versus buy versus build.
Yeah.
Are you capable from a personality perspective to do what it's going to take to build something from scratch
Yeah.
versus deploying the capital and buying something that's already exists?
yeah,
And again, every human's different, but they need to think through that in their own
yeah.
minds before they choose a path.
And for the people who's listening, I don't think some people realize how hard it is to start a business because at first you're gonna be the one doing everything.
You absolutely are. The first year of starting a business is not fun. It's
It's brutal.
hard. It's grueling. The process into itself, from setting up insurance to getting agreements in place and hiring people, getting a website. Like all those things seem, they're trivial. It's easy.
Yeah,
It's time, effort, and resources when you're a company of one or
yeah,
two. It takes a lot. And I think a lot of people sometimes jump into that entrepreneurial
yeah,
world and they realize, wait, this isn't a big corporation where I've got Joe and Steve and Dana to lean on. I've got to do all this
yeah.
myself, and that's a big eye opener for a lot of people walking in.
Yeah, and most of the time it's not just I gotta do this website, I need to do this phone call, I need to start cold calling. No, you first need to learn them. That takes a lot of time.
Yeah, just the whole you learn, and you got to make a lot of mistakes. I've
Yeah,
never met a business owner that hasn't made a few mistakes in their career. I've made a lot,
yeah.
and you learn from them, and you've got to be able to learn from them and keep moving ahead. Is if you stop, you're dead. So you got to keep going.
You know, most of the most kindest, most humble people I've met is the big business guys because they've tried everything, they've learned everything, they got shut down most of the time. So I think they just became so humble and still so great at what they do, you know?
I always say, like, every day I learn something new. Like, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I'll tell you, I like to rely on other people that know stuff
Yeah.
because that advice and that guidance is invaluable. So, being able to listen and take things in is a big part of being a business owner, too.
Yeah. If AI could, take over one specific aspect of the M&A process or whatever it is you're doing in your business, and you can just basically, and one day it's automated, what would that be?
It would definitely be around writing the book. And when we're writing what we call a confidential information
Yeah,
memorandum, that whole process from telling the marketing story about the company, if there was a way to fully automate that, and there's different solutions that
yeah,
are coming out to do some of this stuff, but nothing that's been fully baked yet, that would be a big win for our deal team because
yeah.
it would speed up our process to go from the time you engage to sell a company to the point that you can go to market and start talking to buyers about it.
How long, by the way, does that take usually?
Usually somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, it's a very long time.
So if I could cut that down to a couple weeks
Yeah,
or shorter, just another way to make things move faster,
yeah.
more seamlessly.
Reflecting on your career, what has been the most rewarding aspect on your role in CAS?
Um, wow, there's been a lot, but
Yeah,
I will tell you, growing a team and watching other people flourish and build and grow and make money, but also just
yeah,
get the experience and the know-how. A lot of the folks we hired as we grew our business started out as interns with us, and they're still with us today. And I love to see that. I love seeing folks put the time, effort in to really grow and learn. It's a great feeling.
what do you think is the importance of having a mentor, not just in life but also in business?
I think it's invaluable. I
Yeah,
mean, having somebody that you could talk to when there isn't anybody, it's a lonely place sometimes as a business
yeah,
owner. You're sitting there trying to figure things out, and if you don't have anybody else to talk to, it becomes a lonely existence. So I would tell you, for anybody that's thinking
yeah,
about starting a business or already has, is to find somebody they could talk to about
yeah,
the business and what they're experiencing. It's a great it's a great way to learn.
yeah. For people who are aspiring to become M&A or to enter the fields of M&A consulting and business transformation, what advice could you offer?
You know, I would if I was thinking about it, like if I could go back in time to being in college or 21, 22 years old, whatever it is, and I was thinking about career paths and where I wanted to go, I would tell you have an open mind, get work experience and learn. The more you could learn and get work experience before jumping in and immediately becoming an entrepreneur, that's what I did. And it was very helpful because it gave me it gave me an ability to really understand what I was walking into. You don't have to do it that way, but I do think work experience um, is a critical factor before you jump in and you start something.
And as you said, most of the people that you serve are from call centers, healthcare, and credits. Do you plan on entering other fields as well?
We're actually looking at diversifying and finding some
Yes.
other end markets, but it's not easy, John.
Yeah.
You gotta find people that have relationships and track records in other industries or markets um, to help you expand there.
Yeah.
And so we're always keeping our eyes out for good people with with experience and a Rolodex to help us go into some other areas that are on the periphery of what we do.
Personally, do you believe in what's your thoughts on work-life balance?
Uh, you know, I think work-life balance is
Yeah.
different for everybody. And I remember earlier in my career, people would say, you know, take a day off, do this, do that.
Yeah.
I think it's personal in that way. I think people know what type of things they need to do,
Yeah.
and I think you've got to allow for that to happen. So in my mind, it would be inappropriate for us to be, or as an employer, or frankly, any employer, to be like, you need to take this amount of time off. You can give them the ability to do that, but it's ultimately up to them. And they've got to know that they've got to be able to recognize when they're burned out,
Yeah.
tired, need a break. And and that's all good. We're human. Everybody needs that, but they also need not they also shouldn't be told this is my definition of work life balance because it's different for you, John, than
Yeah.
it is for me, that is for Joe down the road. And I think that's the way we need to think about it. It's different
Yeah.
for everybody.
Personally, what motivates you to keep being better on what you do?
I just personally, I don't know if it's just something in me. I just like learning and I like getting better at
Yeah.
stuff. I don't like I hate when you're in a position where you stagnate. I like to be able to constantly be evolving and checking things off a list.
Yeah.
And I think that helps in terms of continuing to grow and expand a business like that, at least that I'm in.
Yeah. And you've mentioned that you actually have a bookshelf on your, I think, right? Personally, what are the top five books that you look for?
I'm a history buff, John, and I also love biographies.
Yeah.
I still got Steve Jobs' book on my shelf, and I'm still trying to work through it. It's been an endless task to get through it, but it's a heck of a book. But I'm chapters away from finishing.
For the past few weeks, I've been binging the podcast of Dan Carlin. I don't know if you're
Okay.
familiar with it. Oh, you're familiar with it. Oh man,
Yeah.
one of the greatest in terms of telling stories.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a good one.
yeah. I like that he's not biased most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoy those too. I just like when people tell it how it is.
And since we're nearing the end of the podcast, do you have any general advice for people who might be listening?
I would say, take a lot of people are like, oh, take risks, right? That's
Yeah,
an easy thing to say. I like take calculated risks,
yeah,
and really think, just because I started a business or somebody else did doesn't mean that that's always the right pathway for
yeah,
that person either. And they shouldn't feel guilty about that. It's not something to feel upset about that you didn't start your business or
Yeah,
you waited too long. Everybody's different and everybody has a different way of thinking about their life and their mindset, but take calculated risks where you think it's appropriate
yeah,
and know that if it doesn't work out, there'll be other options too.
yeah. In the next maybe 10 years, personally, where do you think your industry is headed? Do you think there's going to be more buyers or more sellers?
In our end markets, I think
Yeah,
you're going to see a lot more sellers
yeah,
because of the technology and the automation that's coming in.
yeah,
I think people are going to say, time out. I don't want to spend multi-million dollars to go invest into and change my business model.
yeah.
And they're not going to want to do that. They're going to want to sell before they have to do that. So I think that'll drive more sellers. And I think from buyers, you'll see more buyers that are Silicon Valley tech oriented. They're going to come in and automate these areas as best they can too.
Do you think that they're scared? I don't want to use the word scared, but let's say they're scared of adapting to new technologies, or they're more scared of the changes that it brings.
I think all the above, John. I think they're just sitting there saying, like you would and I would, eh, what am I going to have to do to really look at to make this all work over the next 5 to 10 years? And do I have the stomach for it? And
Yeah,
do I have the balance sheet to do it too? Or am I better off doing it with somebody else that's got a lot more capital and a lot more know-how that's not going to make a lot of rookie mistakes and have them come in and do it and be a part of it versus doing it on their own.
no, I think some of the more experienced guys, especially the ones who have business for a very very long time, who wants to retire now because I've been through the internet era. There's a lot of changes that we need to do, and I've also been and survived the 2008 crash. Now I gotta deal with COVID, but now gotta deal with AI, and they just want to
Yeah, it's
retire.
true. But then there are business owners too that are sitting there saying, I love this is a great opportunity and I want to risk the farm to go make it
Yeah.
work and figure this out on my own. And those I envy too. I think that's also a way to think about life as well.
Do you think that when there's things, opportunities like this, where it's so big of a change that a lot of people get scared, these very driven business owners, they just smile because they know a lot of businesses will die and they will survive.
And that's what we see in a lot of our coverage areas. The people that really dive in and say, I'm going to go make it. Now I'm going to make it and do extremely well.
Yeah.
You usually do really well during a period of change like this. When there's disruption, there's opportunity.
And since we're nearing the end of the podcast, do you have anything that you'd like to say? Maybe some announcement about CAS?
I'm doing a ton of travel between now and the end of the year. So I'm going from everywhere from Nashville to
Yeah.
Las Vegas to Orlando to New Orleans. So I'm going to be all over the place. So if you happen to be in any of those cities and you want to get together, I'm more than happy to do it too. But we've got a lot of new deals that we're taking out to market too, which is exciting as well.
But I forgot to ask, do you think that since we had the capacity or just became more familiar with Zoom, do you think that deals right now, even after the pandemic, they just go most more smoothly?
I do. I think there's a time and place for it. I think it's a great way to introduce somebody and get to know
Yeah,
people over Zoom as a way to kind of vet things out before you get together
yeah,
face to face. Definitely a good time and place for it. It just I think if people think that that's the only way to rely on doing transactions, I think they're incorrect in their
yeah.
thinking. I think you need that personal interaction. You need to break bread with somebody. You need to
Yeah.
have that beer or coffee or dinner or whatever it is to get to know them.
Fantastic. And where can people find you?
You can find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, um, every social media outlet we're on, and you can find us. But our website address is www.corpadvisorysolutions.com.
Fantastic. I'm gonna have all of those resources up here. And again, Michael, thank you for joining me on the New World podcast.
Thanks, John. It was great. Appreciate the time.
That's all for today's episode of the New World Podcast. We have explored some fascinating topics with our amazing guests, shedding light on the upcoming New World. If you enjoyed today's episode and today's discussion and want to stay updated the future episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the podcast. And if you found value on what we have discussed, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you are interested in being a guest in the future, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email me at john.paul@aicinix.com and add New World Podcast, all capital, in the subject line so I can see it. I always love hearing from our listeners. And don't forget to check out our amazing guests. You can find more information about them by the contact details we provided earlier. Again, thank you for tuning in on the New World Podcast. I know your time is very important and I try to always make the next episode better than the last. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep innovating. This is John Paul Flores signing off from the New World Podcast.